Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Geopolitics with Ramin. In this video, I would like to talk about the support that Israel has given to the radical Syrian jihadi opposition, if we can call it that. And I would like to start in the intro with the former head of Israel's intelligence service, Ephraim Halevi, who did an interview with Mehdi Hassan. It's a very good video or interview to watch, so let's go.
Ephraim Halevi, what outcome do you think the Israeli government wants to see in Syria? A victory for Assad or a victory for the rebels? Or is this Syrian civil war dragging on actually the best of both worlds for Israel because it neutralizes a threat on the country's border? As some would say, it's useful and it distracts attention from the Palestinian problem.
First of all, 6 successive Israeli prime ministers tried to get peace with Syria. 6 of them. And none of them was able to do this. Syria is the key to peace in the Middle East. It has always been Syria and not any other country. Secondly, I want to say very clearly that the problem in Syria today is not the Syrians. It's the external involvement in Syria.
On both sides or one side?
The Syrians entered a civil war. And within the last few years, at least 3 foreign elements have entered Syria. One was the Hezbollah, and Assad tried, with the help of the Hezbollah, to overcome the opposition, and the Hezbollah failed. Secondly, the Iranians came in, and they failed. They failed dismally. And then the Russians had to come in because the Iranians had failed, and the Russians came in. And they
would all say foreign fighters came in on the other side.
Foreign fighters are foreign fighters. But the Hezbollah had nothing to do there. The Iranians had nothing to do there. And I think the Russian presence is not contributing even to Russian
So to deal with my question, what does Israel, in your view, want to see as the outcome in Syria? Assad staying or Assad going? A victory for the rebels or the victory for the government?
I think,
or neither.
I think
perpetuation of war.
What Israel would like to see would be an outcome where an independent Syria, independent from foreign intervention, was left to its own and was able to chart its course.
So an independent Syria with Assad in control would be fine, as long as it was.
I didn't say in control. I'd say an independent Syria in the confines of the Syrian borders would be able to chart a policy of, shall we say, of peace and of acceptance with its neighbors.
It's a wonderful description. I'm sure many people would support it. You're not actually answering the question. With Assad in charge or the rebels in charge?
Whoever is in charge.
So Israel doesn't have a view, is your answer?
Whoever is in charge and is willing to follow such a policy.
So to be clear, Israel does not have a preference between the rebels and Assad. It's whoever sticks to this description.
I think we have no preference.
Okay, you say no preference. There have been reports that Israel has been treating wounded Syrian rebel fighters in its hospitals on the border, including fighters from Nusra Front, which is of course the Al-Qaeda proxy in Syria. Do those reports worry you that Israel's helping wounded Al-Qaeda aligned fighters?
As I said before, in a different context, it's always useful also to deal with your enemies in a humane way. And I think that when you have people who are wounded and you can deal with them in a humane way, the considerations as to whether to take them in are not simply whether it's politically useful or whether it's politically
contributory. So it's purely humanitarian, you say? So there's no tactical or political or strategic...
I didn't say there's no tactical. I said the main consideration, the immediate consideration is humane.
But the tactical issues involved, I mean, you know better than me the phrase blowback. You don't think there's going to be blowback against Israel if you get into bed with a group like Nusra Front?
No, I don't think so. I don't think there's going to be blowback.
Why?
Because I think that, unfortunately, the rules of the game in Syria are such that you can do anything that is not possible to be done anywhere else.
Yeah, I think people said that in Afghanistan too. Would you also treat Hezbollah fighters?
No. I would not treat...
Have you not just contradicted what you told me 60 seconds ago about humanely treating your enemies?
No. I think as far as Hezbollah fighters are concerned, with them we have a different account.
So let me be clear, you're happy to treat Al-Qaeda fighters, but not Hezbollah fighters?
We have a different account with Hezbollah, a totally different account. because Hezbollah has carried out the type of actions against us which preclude us from going into what the Al-Qaeda has done. Al-Qaeda, to the best of my recollection, has up to now not attacked Israel.
But it's attacked your number one ally and protector and sponsor, the United States of America. There is a quote-unquote war on terror being going on for 15 years.
First of all, when it comes to fighting Al-Qaeda in intelligence and in other areas, yes, we are together with the United States on all these things.
Okay.
But
So
Israel was not specifically targeted by Al-Qaeda, and therefore it's a different kind of account than we have with Hezbollah.
you've said Israel should talk to Hamas, talk to your enemies.
Yes.
Would you also talk to Hezbollah?
If they change their spots, yes. If they show the inclination, for instance, that certain people in Hamas have shown.
You don't believe anyone in Hezbollah has shown the inclination to Hamas?
No, I think not. Because Hezbollah is an extension of Iran. And unfortunately, the Iranians, I think out of miscalculation, are continuing their policies towards Israel, and they will suffer from it as they are suffering in Syria.
All right. So in this segment, I want to talk about how Israel actually directly, in many ways, and indirectly, is benefiting from this situation, and how Giuliani and his thugs are pretty much pursuing both Turkish, well, in this case, Israeli interests, but also Turkish. Maybe that's for another time. But the whole pan-Turkist or neo-Ottoman ambitions that Erdogan has, that's also a pretty important piece we should definitely examine one day. Do a history of the pan-Turkist ideology. But it says here, from Tehran Times, Al-Julani's pursuit of Israeli affection. Let's see here. In an interview with Saudi media, the terrorist leader turned politician said Israel was planning to invade Syria before the fall of Assad. If Israeli forces had entered Syria, then Iranians would have brought in Iraqis. The chain of events would have eventually affected Turkey, he said, without mentioning that Israel appears to have proceeded with the alleged plan, as it has occupied new areas in the Arab countries since Assad's departure. Then Russia and America would have entered a war as well, and the situation would become extremely dangerous for the region, he said, apparently suggesting that the overthrow of Assad at the hands of HTS-led factions prevented an all-out regional war. Yes, I actually saw this video on, I think it was on Telegram, this interview. Quite remarkable. He pretty much admits that he's doing the bidding for the Israelis. But anyway, here, Giuliani is pretty much asking Israel to stop bombing the Syrian territory. And this guy is... he can beg and plead all he wants. He's not in charge. But anyway. In first comment on Jewish state since fall of Assad regime, and this is from Times of Israel, Shara says Syria will seek stability after a long civil war, hints at diplomatic solutions to avert regional escalation. Yes, that's what you think. Okay? Israel doesn't care about diplomacy. Israel acts with deception. Israel is a expansionist state. And you can see that on the patches of the IDF soldiers or IOF soldiers, where they have a map of Greater Israel stretching from Wadi in Egypt, and this is from the Old Testament, right, to Euphrates in Iraq. And this also encompasses parts of northern Saudi Arabia. Israel is an expansionist colonial settlement. And yeah, good luck with pleading and begging from their side. And on top of that, they have also bought or sought allegiance from the Druze community in Syria, to a certain extent, I can understand the Druze being worried. But at the same time, the Zionists and the Wahhabists are, both of them are extremists, and they both view Druze people as second-class citizens, whether they want to acknowledge this or not, but it is what it is. Anyway, the leader of the Syrian Islamist rebel group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, who spearheaded the overthrow of the Bashar al-Assad government, spoke Saturday about Israel for the first time since taking over the country. In an interview with the Syrian TV news channel, Ahmad al-Shara, who is better known by his nom de guerre, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, said that Israel has no more excuses to carry out airstrikes in Syria, and that recent IDF attacks on Syrian soil have crossed red lines and threaten an unjustified escalation in the region. Earlier in the week, Israel launched a major operation to destroy the Syrian military strategic capabilities, including chemical weapon sites, which were destroyed years ago. So I don't really believe Syria has any chemical weapons left like that. But anyway, missiles, air defenses, air force, and navy targets in a bid to prevent them from falling into the hands of hostile elements. Speaking of hostile elements, there are actually still pro-Ba'athist people left resisting in Syria. And they are usually in the mountainous and coastal regions of the country, especially in Latakia and on the border to Lebanon, and have actually killed a lot of HTS members. Interesting. But anyway, in a move that has drawn some international condemnation, Israel also entered UN Nations Patrol Buffer Zone on the Golan Heights just hours after the rebels led by HTS took Damascus. Israel said it will not become involved in the conflict in Syria, that is seizure of the buffer zone established in 1974. And it was a defensive move and a temporary one until it can guarantee security along the frontier. It's not a temporary one. I mean, they've already put the flag up on Mount Heron, I believe the name is. Anyway, Netanyahu added that Israel was ready to establish relations with the new rulers, but won't hesitate to attack if they threaten the Jewish state or allow Iran to reestablish itself in Syria. Interesting. So the pro-Palestinian camp is cheering, and when I say pro-Palestinian camp, I'm usually referring to some Palestinians as well in the Palestinian territories, but also a lot of non-Palestinians here in the West who have been cheering for this so-called revolution, both in the mainstream Sunni Muslim communities as well as on the left, the liberal left in general. And yes, they are fucking supporting head choppers. And these head choppers have barely lifted a finger. They haven't lifted a finger at all against Israel. In fact, as you saw in the intro or the segment in my video where the former head of Mossad talking about how Israel is giving medical aid to Jabhat al-Nusra fighters, which is HTS right now, is beyond me that people can't see this. It's just the mind-boggling hypocrisy. And the fact that, when I was on my way shopping for some groceries yesterday, I saw this Syrian dude driving his BMW with this new Syrian flag, and which is actually a French colonial occupation flag, but regardless. And he had a picture of one of the members of, I believe it was Nur what's it called? The Nur al-Zingi Brigade, which is a part of HTS. And this brigade actually decapitated this specific individual. I forgot his name. I tried to find him. He decapitated a 12-year-old Palestinian kid. Posted that shit up in that picture, and he had his head in the air like that. When they say that many Syrian refugees should be deported, I'm not saying all of them, because not all of them are supportive of this, but definitely a lot of them are. And a lot of the Sunni Muslim community is. I'm going to be very blunt about that. I personally feel that yes, a lot of these individuals or communities probably should be deported. We have people out here cheering for head choppers, cheering for Al Qaeda, and then they cry about Islamophobia. Of course, people are going to get a bad perception of your religion and your community. But the naivety, man, the stupidity is just crazy. And it says here, Syrian rebel leader, territory will not, and this is also from Times of Israel, territory will not be used to launch attacks against Israel. Chief of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which outed the Assad regime, pledges commitment to 1974 buffer zone agreement, says IDF activity in Syria must end and Israel has to pull back. Did you hear that, Israel? You have to pull back. But anyway, Abu Muhammad al-Julani, the leader of the Islamist group toppled Bashar al-Assad in Syria, said Monday that Syria will not be used as a launch pad for attacks against Israel, and that he is committed to the 1974 agreement that established a demilitarized zone in the Syrian territory as a buffer between the two countries. We are committed to the 1974 agreement, and we are prepared to return the UN monitors, Julani told the Times of London, referring to the peacekeeping forces that manned the demilitarized zone alongside Syrian troops. We do not want any conflict, whether with Israel or anyone else, and we will not let Syria be used as a launch pad for attacks. The Syrian people need a break, and the strikes must end, and Israel has to pull back its previous positions, he said. Interesting. Will not be used as a launching pad. In fact, that is very interesting, because I have an article here, two actually. One from Times of Israel, as well as a lot of these are from Times of Israel. I'm telling you, fellas. I'm telling you guys, ladies and gentlemen, this is not Iranian state propaganda that I'm reading from. I think I have one website here. I think it's IRNA, where they talk about, Israel's connections with the Syrian rebels. But the Cradle is an alternative media. I know that. But it's still a whole validation. HTS officials order Palestinian resistance factions to disarm, close bases in Syria, reports. The new rulers in Damascus are taking actions to prevent the Palestinians from defending themselves or resisting Israel. So much so for your progressive anti-Zionist revolution there. To all the fucking, liberals and Islamist Salafis out there who are so, who claim that Julani and his thugs are going to fight to liberate Al-Quds, or Jerusalem as it's called. Representatives from Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, the new ruling extremist organization in Damascus, informed the representatives of the Palestinian factions of Syria they would no longer be allowed to possess any weapons, train camps, or military headquarters. Ibrahim Amin of Akhbar reported on 13th of December. Stop it. Amin further reports that the factions must dissolve their military formations as soon as possible in exchange for political and charitable work under the roof of the new Syrian state. Palestinian factions, including Fatah, the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, PFLP, and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine General Command, PFLP-GC, the Saiga, and Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, Martyr Ali Aswad Brigade, have had a presence in Syria as guests of the government for decades. And they keep saying that Assad hasn't done anything for the struggle against Israel, for the Palestinian struggle. As much as he was had a repressive government, which is really no different than any other Arab ruler. The only reason why he was punished by the West is because of his stance on Palestine. That's about it. That's it. It had nothing to do with him being sectarian, which is horseshit. They say that the Ba'athist government was a sectarian government, which I completely disagree with. Most of his ministers and even soldiers were of Sunni background. There were also Christians in there. Hafez, his father, just like Assad, repressed or arrested or killed certain opposition people, not because they were Sunni, but because they opposed their rule. If you were a Sunni who supported the Syrian government back then, you would be rewarded. That's it. If you were an Alawite who opposed that government, you would have been punished and or arrested. Simple as that. There's nothing sectarian about that. But these people want to cry sectarianism. You know, we're being oppressed by the Shiites and the Alawites. Hit ass. Anyway, sorry, man. Sometimes this topic kind of gets to me a little bit. But anyway. Yes, Palestinians came to Syria as refugees during the 1948 Nakba, the year pre-state Zionist militias ethnically cleansed some 750,000 Palestinians from the land that became the state of Israel, making them refugees in neighboring countries. Yes, I think you guys get the gist of it. Maybe I should read this as well. In 2012, the predecessor to HTS, Nusra Front, invaded and occupied Yarmouk, seeking to use it as a gateway to conquer Damascus. The camp was largely destroyed over the following years in the course of the fighting. ISIS also occupied the camp and fought against the Syrian army and the Palestinian factions there. And Yarmouk is a special case because many Palestinians who oppose Assad, they talk about Yarmouk often, that he is the one who's responsible for killing a lot of Palestinians there, which is funny because that's not the whole picture. This place was deeply embedded with Nusra Front fighters and ISIS fighters. And on top of that, there were Palestinian factions who fought against these groups inside the camp. So how can you only blame the Syrian government for that? That's crazy to me. But anyway, Amin say that although the new Syrian government does not talk about establishing relations with Israel, its representatives talk about taking practical steps to prevent any existing or potential resistance against Israel from Syrian territory. And Israel is trying to seek something similar with the Lebanese government. Incredible, man. And they wonder why the Arabs are not respected. I mean, this is the crazy shit you do. Sectarianism, corruption, selling one another out, tribalism. Like, get it together. Anyway. Times of Israel also reported on this. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, the Islamist rebel group that spearheaded the insurgency and toppled Syrian President Bashar al-Assad, has reportedly ordered Palestinian terror factions in Syria, they call it terror factions, they're legitimate resistance movements, to lay down their weapons, close their training camps, and dissolve their military formations. According to a report published in the pro-Hezbollah Lebanese daily Al-Akhbar on Friday, HTS has informed the Palestinian factions, chiefly among them Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, headquartered in Damascus, that they will be able to retain their charities and conduct political activities under the aegis of the Syrian state, but will not be allowed to use Syria as a base or a point of passage for military actions against Israel. Interesting. Well, they mentioned Hamas. Parts of Hamas was actually supportive of these Syrian rebels. But at the end of the day, Hamas is also part of the Muslim Brotherhood. And it doesn't really surprise me that certain elements within Hamas were actually supportive of this. But let's see. Okay, maybe I didn't have it in an article, but nonetheless, we can move on to this one. The Israeli defense minister. If I had to choose between Iran and ISIS, I'd choose ISIS. Moshe Yalon. All right. Speaking at the Institute for National Security Studies, INSS conference in Tel Aviv on January 19th. This is from 2016, by the way. Israeli Defense Minister Moshe Yalon made a bold statement. If he had to choose between Iran and the Islamic State, he told the audience he would choose ISIS. Yalon reasoned that Iran had greater capabilities than the Islamic State and remained the biggest threat for Israel. He argued that if Syria were to fall to one of the two powers, he would prefer it were the Islamic State rather than Iran or Iran-backed groups. We believe ISIS will be eventually defeated territorially after the blows it has been suffering, and in the light of the attacks on its oil reserves, he told the conference, according to Ynet News. This is from Washington Post, by the way, if you were asking. Yalon said that the current problems in the Middle East show that the region was at the height of the clash of civilizations. He also added that Israel shared common interests with the regional Sunni Muslim powers who were also threatened by the Shia Muslim Iran. Well, there we go. Haven't we said many times that the Sunni Muslim countries, especially in the Middle East, are very much in the pockets of Israel? But nonetheless, coming just days after the U.S. began to lift sanctions on Iran, part of a nuclear deal that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Yalon had vocally opposed, the hawkish minister's comments were widely interpreted as a further evidence of divergence of priorities between Israel and the United States. On social media, a number of observers criticized the comments, while others reasoned they were simply rational look at the situation from Israel's viewpoint. I agree. From Israel's viewpoint, this makes sense. We will weaponize the Sunni regional powers. We will support a Salafi axis that will surround Iran and destroy the axis of resistance that Iran has helped to create. And this will be used as a buffer zone to protect Israel. That's what it's all about. So I agree with his statements. The one thing that baffles me is the stupidity of a lot of the people within the Sunni Muslim or Muslim, especially the Sunni Muslim community. The Shiites, I know, obviously are pretty well versed at what's going on in the region. But nonetheless, let's move on to this article. No, there I found an article actually. Not the Times of Israel. But anyway, ISIS fighters attacked Israel Defense Force unit, then apologized, claims former commander. Very interesting, indeed. What is going on now? My computer is bugging out. This is why you shouldn't buy iMacs, by the way. Because when they go slow, you can't change the parts separately. This is a second-hand one. But nonetheless, let's go back to business. ISIS-affiliated fighters apologized after launching an attack on Israeli soldiers, the country's former defense minister has claimed. And this is from The Independent, not some crazy conspiracy site. Moshe Yalon was reportedly referring to an incident when a group of linked to ISIS in the Syrian Golan Heights, I believe this is the Khalid ibn Walid brigade, right? Exchanged fire with Israeli forces last November. The area is a rocky plateau in southwestern Syria, which was partially seized by Israel during the Six-Day War of 1967. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, there was one case recently where Daesh, ISIS, opened fire and apologized. Mr. Yalon said, speaking at an event in the northern city of Alufa, during which he was being interviewed about Israel's policy on Syria. After a short gun battle, the Israeli military attacked Syrian jihadist group Khalid ibn Walid with airstrikes and tank fire, killing 4 of them. This was the first direct clash between Israeli forces and ISIS militants. The terror group on a military patrol on the Israeli side, a military spokesman had said at the time. A spokesperson for Mr. Yalon refused to elaborate on how ISIS expressed its apology to Israel after the attack, and the Israeli Defense Forces also refused to comment. Well, nonetheless, they did apologize. We just don't know how. And the Israelis said they did. So, I mean, anyway. All right, and this will be a knockout blow, I guess. IDF chief finally acknowledges that Israel supplied weapons to Syrian rebels. Times of Israel. In an interview with UK Sunday Times, outgoing Army Commander Gadi Eisenkot says Israel gave opposition groups light arms for self-defense. Outgoing IDF Chief of Staff Eisenkot this weekend acknowledged for the first time that Israel had indeed provided weaponry to Syrian rebel groups in the Golan Heights during the country's 7-year civil war. Until Sunday, Israel would say officially only that it had given humanitarian aid to Syrian opposition groups across the border, while denying or refusing to comment on reports that it had supplied them with arms as well. Well, there you go. I'm not going to read through this whole article. You can Google it yourself. It's pretty elaborate. I was looking for another article from Sana'a, actually, where the Syrian army. This is from the former governor of Syria. There you go. I actually found it. Ghanitra, yeah, I think that's how you pronounce it in Arabic. Let's see what that says, because this is from an army raid by the Syrian Arab Army back in, 2016, 17, 18, something like that. It's quite interesting. Have patience, ladies and gentlemen. Have patience. There we go. 2018. There you go. U.S. Israeli-made weapons, medicines seized in countryside of Damascus, Quneitra. Anyway, Damascus, Quneitra, Sana'a. The current authorities on Thursday found U.S. and Israeli-made weapons and medicines left behind by terrorists in the southwestern countryside of Damascus and northern countryside of Quneitra. The seized weapons, Sana'a reporter said, included missiles, various anti-tank missiles, medium machine guns of 23 millimeter, 14 millimeter communication devices, stolen vehicles, Israeli, American, and British-made medicines, medical equipment, and food. The reporter added that the competent authorities, continue the combing of all the areas liberated from terrorism in the countryside of Damascus and Ghanitra to secure the return of the displaced people to their homes and normal lives. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. If this isn't enough proof that these Syrian rebels, if we're going to call them that, have worked in the interest of NATO, of Israel, I don't know what is. I literally showed you guys Operation Timber Sycamore in my former videos regarding Syria, in the collapse of the Syrian Arab Republic video series. And we still have people within the pro-Palestinian camp who are vehemently supporting these guys. The problem I have with the pro-Palestinian camp, you have invited a lot of Sunni sectarian elements. Even a lot of Palestinians have been turned into this nonsense, right, of religious bigotry and chauvinism. And then you have this idea among many people who support Palestine, they claim, but they think that Zionism is somehow confined to the borders and of occupied Palestine. And that's it. They don't think that Israel, for some reason, can operate in Syria, in Lebanon, in Iran, in the rest of the Arab world, even parts of Africa and Latin America. They have tentacles, right? And within the media space here in the West, right? And the lobby groups such as IPAC in America and whatnot. But no, it's only limited to Palestine, to occupy Palestine. Like this is mind-boggling that these people can't do a little bit of research, a little bit of critical thinking skills, and that's it. There's literally no excuses for being this stupid and ignorant. But maybe I'm expecting too much. People aren't actually as rational as we think. And I have pretty much stopped going to a lot of these pro-Palestine rallies because of these people, right? They're not really advancing the Palestinian struggle. I'm going to be really honest with you. If you're supporting this nonsense that's going on in Syria, in Libya, or anywhere else, okay? As I've always said, yes, Bashar al-Assad was corrupt. His government was corrupt. He inherited a corrupt state. And there is legitimate criticism against him. I brought up the neoliberal reforms that, destroyed the economy and created a lot of poverty and class division, and the stupidity of bringing in Qatari and Turkish investment to the country, which led eventually to the spreading of the Wahhabi Muslim Brotherhood ideologies, okay? And this radicalized a lot of impoverished people who couldn't seek help from the government. Yeah, this is something that I can agree with. But that doesn't mean that I will support fucking head choppers to take over Damascus. That's lunacy. That's crazy to me. If you're part of the Syrian opposition that is truly grassroots, that has a program of how to run the country, that is anti-imperialist, that is anti-Zionist, I can respect that. But this I cannot respect. These religious zealots who have grabbed power now in Syria are nothing but geopolitical pawns for NATO and Turkey especially, and Israel. Now, people are saying, well, aren't arms flowing through still to a certain extent to Hezbollah? Yeah, I've heard so too. Israel has bombed a few deliveries here and there. But it's not because of Ahmad al-Shara. It's because this border is so porous. There's still a lot of supporters for the resistance in Lebanon and Palestine. And on top of that, I guess you can buy people off in terms of corruption. That's just what I'm theorizing here. This is how I believe some of these weapons go through. Others say that Iran has made some sort of secret deal with Turkey. Possible, I don't know. Israeli politicians and military people are now saying that Turkey is actually a much more imminent threat to Israel's interests than Iran right now. So who knows? But I heavily doubt that Erdogan is going to declare war on Israel. But these pro-Palestine activists, many of whom are brave, I'm not taking that away from them. They have done as well. But supporting this nonsense in the long term will set back the Palestinian cause many, many years. But yes, I would like to thank everybody for watching and listening. Like the video, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.